Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and we're back with Development Hell. And we got Matt and Alex, and we're all wagging our fingers at the screen. That means we're ready.
We are ready.
Matt's the most.
You remember Fantastic Mr. Fox? He's just a little,
Just a little different.
Yeah.
I love that movie. Some top-notch stop-motion animation and one very smug fox, played by George Clooney. Perfect casting. So I guess technically this is our third show since we had to split our first one in half because we talked a lot. So this one's not going to be 3.5 hours, so we could promise you that at least, or at least we're not planning on it. But so what we're going to be starting off with is our development health section. I'm going to be bringing up a couple films coming out this weekend and next weekend. And Matt and Alex and I are going to give our thumbs up. We're going to greenlight it, or we're going to send it back to development hell. So, and then
our button. So where's our button?
Got to work on the button, but we're real close to having that low. In fact, Haileigh, much thanks to Haileigh, she sent me the email with all the files today, so we'll have access to a few different logos.
Awesome.
Logos. Yeah.
So then we could get rid of the filler one that I use that I literally just messed around on Paint for a couple minutes, and I'm like, we're gonna go with this for now.
Hey, it works. It works.
See, I get to use Paint all the time making thumbnails for all of my videos for my YouTube channel. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to mess around with this. Use 3D shapes because, it's Paint 3D. So fancy. But our main topic of what we're going to be talking about today are movie sequels. And we're going to go at it in the perspective of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we're each going to be talking about one sequel we really love, one that we think is terrible, and one where we kind of question, why was this a thing? Whether it's good or bad, just why? Because honestly, there's a lot of them. Why did this need a sequel? But we're going to get started with our opening segment. So the first two films I'm going to talk about actually came out on Wednesday the 16th. One of them came out on streaming for Netflix, The Devil All the Time. And this is a film adapted from a novel, which interestingly enough, the film is narrated by the author of the book. And the film is kind of an American Gothic kind of drama. It is very grim, it's very dark, and it's starring Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Bill Skarsgård, Jason Clarke, Sebastian Stan, Mia Wasikowska, Haley Bennett, Riley Keough, more people, because they basically threw every dollar they can find at getting quality actors to throw in this movie. So I've kind of gotten, at least personally, into the place where I don't really watch trailers anymore because, I don't go to the movies in person much anymore and then don't sit through a half an hour of trailers. So I kind of go in cold looking at, what the movie's about, who made it, who's in it. And this was going to be one of the big ones for the fall that Netflix had coming. So with all that being said, Matt, does this pique your interest? Would you give this movie? Okay.
I did see that. Number one, I did see that trailer. It looks fantastic. It looks very different than, I don't know, what I expected that a couple of these actors to do. I'm happy the fact that I get to see Robert Pattinson do a little bit of screaming before he can start the Batman. Let me see. Tom Holland is in it. I don't know if this is gonna hurt his heartthrob status, but whatever. Because if you watch the trailer, he's like, whoa, this guy's intense. Yeah, definitely. This is good. I'm watching it. Maybe twice. I don't know.
Alex, did I pique your interest? Are you going to greenlight this or send it back to development hell?
Anytime you have, a kind of a compelling cast, I'd have a hard time sending it back to development hell. Robert Pattinson, he's in the movie.
Yes.
He's been doing a lot of great stuff over the past 5 years. So anything that he's in, you know, I'm definitely interested in seeing his performance. So I'm not going to send it back to development hell.
And I did watch it already. And I posted my review for it on my YouTube channel today, and I should be having one coming out on Sif Pop as well. But going in, I was super hyped for this movie. So like I definitely gave it a green light, because just basically the cast, honestly, was enough to get me excited. And I was really interested in seeing Tom Holland in more of a central role in a film that wasn't just him being Spider-Man. Because a lot of the other films I've seen him in, like The Currents War and Lost City of Zed, like he was like in small supporting roles in them. And then Robert Pattinson, and I agree with Alex, honestly, Robert Pattinson and Jake Gyllenhaal are kind of like two actors, and Joaquin Phoenix, that it's like if they agreed to do this movie, there's probably something special about it at this point. So definitely piqued my interest. So you should all go check out this movie. I will guarantee you it's 2 hours of 20 minutes of dark, grim movie. It is not a fun time. It will challenge you watching this movie. For good or bad, you'll find out. Now,
Nice.
The other one that came out Wednesday the 16th in limited release was from Bleecker Street, and it is The Secrets We Keep. And Noomi Rapace, who's famous from being being Lisbeth Salander in the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo film, and has popped up in a lot of things, including like she popped up in like Sherlock Holmes, Game of Shadows, stuff like that. But she plays a woman who survived the Holocaust and married an American and came to America, living in this suburban town. And she happens to see this man who she believes to have been a Nazi who did horrible things to her during the war. And she kidnaps him. And this man is played by Joel Kinnaman, which thinks very odd that they go out of their way to cast Joel Kinnaman as a German who has to do an accent in this movie. But that's just a side note. But she's torturing this man and trying to get him to admit to what he did to her. And what makes it morally ambiguous is, should she be doing this? And her husband finds out, and does he tell? Does he tell anybody? And it's set on this backdrop of that perfect 50s America while they're holding this man in their basement. So with that kind of description, the cast, Matt, does that pique your interest?
Yeah. Maybe a little bit less than the first movie, but it seems interesting. I guess I'd be interested in how the premise sort of plays out in terms of me staying, like, not wanting to turn it off just because it's so dark or so kind of like almost like one note. You ever get that feeling where it's kind of like, okay, this is like the point of the movie, like it's a scary movie or it's a sad movie, but there's no like ups or turns. It's just kind of like this, it's like bleak. You know what I mean?
Well, and I guess concerning
want
about
to
the fact.
So like, I don't know. Yeah, but Greenlight though. Yeah, why not?
Okay, so a softer green light than the first one, because you were like 100% yes on The Devil All the Time. How about you, Alex?
Well, it doesn't pique my interest as much as the first one, but it's interesting to see an actress like this go back into territory that's somewhat familiar, because my understanding is in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I mean, she gets tortured. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so now she's the one doing the torturing. This also kind of reminds me of Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman back from the late 70s, at least, you know, the Nazi element of it. And so it doesn't pique my interest as much. It's probably not something that would, ooh, I got to go see that. But if it's written well, it could be really compelling.
Mm-hmm.
And 1950s, you know, apple pie America with the shadows of what's going on in the background. But that is America. We're always trying to relive the apple pie years of our lives, but constantly like ignoring what's really wrong.
Just can't find that apple pie though.
Nah, it's in the window. It's on the windowsill. I can smell it. I can't. I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say.
So I got a screener of this. So I got a chance to see this a couple weeks ago, honestly. And it's from Bleecker Street Production Company. And basically any film that they make, at least I know it's going to be like well crafted and a classy film. Like I expect there to be some kind of quality, even if it's not something that I absolutely love. I expect it to be well done and put together. So I was a soft green light on this one when I got to see it. It is definitely a film worth seeing. I really enjoyed it a lot. It's a really quality thriller, and it poses a lot of questions. There's some mystery about it because you have that question over your head. It's like, is this guy really a Nazi? And is this woman just doing this out of fear and like what she expects this person to be? Or like, was this person really someone deserving of what she's doing to him? And that sense of mystery and tension is really well done in the film. Speaking of tension, so this one's very interesting because I remember seeing the trailers for Antebellum well before shit hit the fan. And being, okay, this is interesting, that first trailer that came out where it seemed like, is this some kind of time twisty thing where Janelle Monáe is kind of in the present but also in the past as a slave, but also in modern time as well. And that trailer really caught my attention. I haven't watched any of the more recent trailers, so I don't know if this has changed, but Antebellum came out this weekend completely on VOD, so it's not in theaters. It's $20 to rent, so I guess, did either of you see the trailers for that, like at least the initial trailer? So thinking about all of that, and without going into how the reviews were going into this weekend, Matt, did you greenlight or send this back to development hell?
When I first saw the trailer, it seemed like an interesting premise because it's like, oh, like that seems interesting. But then as I kept like watching the same trailer, it might be like a second trailer, I can't remember, but definitely now that I see like the commercial on all the time, it feels like it has kind of like a lost quality to me. I know you love that show, but it's just, at some point I could just for me I had to fall off of it just because it seemed like it was, let's be super, super odd and let's throw so many question marks at you, but then it's almost like you have to meet the movie kind of like more than halfway. You know what I mean? So then it's like so weird and it's so complex, or it's so just like off, I don't know, whatever, like so off the base, and it's like, okay, wow, this is new, but then it's like, oh wait, that's the reason why the base exists. Kind of like I think you said that about Tenet, where it's kind of like, oh, like this is like very interesting, like there's a protagonist and like the story structure is weird. Oh wait, maybe the reason why there are those things because those
Maybe
things
you can't hear anything because the sound mixing's terrible.
Boom, exactly. Also, LOL. So yes, I don't know. I mean, I've seen a bunch of reviews like this week, but to not review it or just to say whether or not I did watch it, nah, I'm gonna skip it. Yeah.
Matt sending it back to development hell. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I can't say one way or the other right now because the trailer. I mean, I've only seen one or two of the trailers, and it does look compelling. It looks like the type of movie that's, it looks a little scary. Not necessarily the type of movie I would necessarily want to go and see, but it might be worth it, for me to sign myself up for that scare.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to send it back. Instead, I would probably maybe watch a few more of the trailers, read a little bit more about what the core of the movie is about, and then kind of make that decision. Because but if I was basing it just on what I was seeing alone, I might not greenlight it.
Alex is gonna leave it, like the reel of it, just kind of sitting on his desk for now. So it's like it's gonna sit there in limbo for a bit. So
That's right. It's there. I cut off that part. I got all my reels right here. See, this is my hand. This is where my reels are. Hand, reels. I just, there's not enough space.
So based off of the first trailer, I've gotten to the point where it's really hard to sell a movie to me just based off of a crazy premise. because it's so easy for you to mess up said premise and for it not to fully come together. And like, I actually thought this was a Blumhouse film when I saw the trailer for the first time and realizing that it's not. And like, it felt like a Blumhouse film. And unfortunately, very, very recently, they've been hit or miss for me. And it kind of had that vibe. Now, I did watch it, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but buyer beware based off of the marketing. Like, really beware. Because there's some stuff in that first teaser trailer that straight lies to you about the film. Like, so how they edit some particular things in that trailer that are kind of like those mind-bending moments aren't like that in the film. And to let Alex know, at least, it's not scary at all. And this is coming from somebody who curled up in a ball on my couch in the middle of the day with all the lights on and natural light during Babadook. So as somebody who gets really afraid of movies, this movie didn't scare me once. So this, like, I would have been a soft pass on this. And just from my, like, actually watching it and really thinking about it, when I saw the reviews were so bad, I didn't read them, but I'm like, I guess it really didn't come together. I feel like this movie is going to have the same kind of backlash as The Village and Glass, with how, like, this has a twist that would be like an M. Night Shyamalan twist, but one of his bad ones that leaves you like, I was lied to about what this movie is really about. And what it turns out to be is a lot less interesting than what it could have been. So anyone who's watching the trailers and making a judgment off of it, they want to see this movie, just beware the trailers don't sell this film very well. So they basically pulled an A24 horror movie. The trailers don't really represent what the kind of movie you're going to go see, which is also why I'm wary of trailers. But so that's Antebellum. Now, this one was, I didn't even know about this particular movie until, and like, you guys can throw in your thoughts on it. I just want to at least like throw this out there because this is a film that I got to see at the Delsey Drive-In last night, and it's called Alone. And it's about a woman who, which I didn't even, it's not even on, like, I used firstshowing.net to see what are like the main releases coming out. And this wasn't even on there. And this is a small little thriller about a woman who's kidnapped off the road by like a serial killer and then escapes and is going through the wilderness for her life. And it's a really intense thriller and just like a little film that does it so well and adds just enough to make it even better. I just wanted to like throw a little shout out to this film since it's a little film, and I got to watch it in a drive-in. So, you know, woman getting taken off the road out of her car, sitting in my car in the dark, just made it even better. So there was one moment where one of the attendants walked by our car and scared the crap out of Jess, which then scared the crap out of me because she got spooked. So it's like, I think it would be a hard sell just watching the trailer. It's like, oh, I've seen this movie before. It's just really well done and like a really quality thriller. So if either of you get a chance to check it out, or anybody watching this, it's a nice little film worth checking out. Now, the last like big film that's definitely going to be coming out within the next week, on Wednesday the 23rd, we have Enola Holmes from Netflix. So this is about the younger sister of Sherlock Holmes, played by Millie Bobby Brown, and Henry Cavill plays Sherlock Holmes, and their other brother is played by Sam Claflin. Now, like, I watched, the only reason I've seen any of this trailer is because, you know, Netflix, automatically starts running things if you finish something, and it started playing some of the trailer. It has like a nice, fun, like kind of dauntingly peppy kind of tone to it. And basically all I know is it's like she's a young little detective who's Sherlock Holmes' younger sister. So not quite sure if we're the target audience for this, but based off of that, who's in it, and that this is about Sherlock Holmes' younger sister, Matt, are you going to be heading over to Netflix to watch Enola Holmes?
Yeah, I would agree like that. I think that I think Henry Cavill is in it too. I think, right?
Yes, he's Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, yeah. It looks interesting. It actually looks kind of cool, kind of funny. It looks a lot more interesting than what was that other movie that we were talking about last week? The teen movie.
The Broken Hearts Gallery.
Yeah, 100%. The Sherlock Holmes sister, way farther on my I don't know must see than Broken Hearts. Yeah, I'll totally watch that. Greenlight.
All right. How about you, Alex?
I just don't do mystery is not my thing. So Sherlock Holmes mysteries, it's typically not my thing. So I'm I'm not going to send it back anywhere. But I'm not going through that street light. I'm turning my car around. That's no
Not
no
going to go on
mystery.
Baker Street.
No.
So that'll be interesting when we talk about, if it doesn't get pushed back, Death on the Nile coming out in about a month. The new Hercule Poirot film, the follow-up to Kenneth Branagh's Murder on the Orient Express, comes out in, I think, about a month, which is really interesting because I'm pretty sure that's the next wide release, because things are getting pushed back now because Greenland, Gerard Butler's next film, which I was originally going to bring up today, got pushed back to an undisclosed later date. And then Wonder Woman got pushed back to Christmas. So we're kind of at the point where, just to give some perspective, Tenet made $4.7 million this weekend, leading the box office. So, it's not dropping a whole lot, but, can, AMC's and Regal's and Cinemarks and all other theaters really justify staying open to get that few of people coming into the movies? Because if Tenet got really, really strong buzz and not a bunch of people being mad that they couldn't understand half the movie, maybe more people would be going out to see it, but they're really not. So I think, at least for the near future, most of the films we're going to be seeing are probably going to be streaming or VOD. And it's kind of where it's at, because I predict more of these films are going to get pushed back. There's more and more rumors about Black Widow getting pushed back. And I even heard some vague rumors that Soul, the new Pixar film that's supposed to come out around Thanksgiving, might get sent to Disney+.
Heard that.
So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks seeing what falls now, especially because Wonder Woman was Tenet's weird. But just putting that out there, Tenet is a weird film. And that was going to be a hard sell for anything that didn't have great word of mouth. And also, Wonder Woman probably was going to be the first big, really commercial kind of film to come out since theaters reopened, and we're not getting it. Got pushed back to December. So Warner Brothers is trying to push out Dune and Wonder Woman in December at this point. Which, speaking of trailers, just to bring this up, did either of you watch the Dune trailer? That was a very interesting trailer, especially with the fun use of Eclipse by Pink Floyd in the trailer. Of course, it's a cover of the song because, you can't make a modern trailer anymore without having a darker, moodier cover of a song in it, which you didn't really need to make it darker and moodier. That is kind of a dark, moody song to begin with. But it's Denis Villeneuve definitely pulled off making a grand scale sci-fi like Blade Runner again. We'll have to see if people actually flock to go see it, because it's weird. And that giant worm at the end of the trailer, terrifying in terms of scale. So that's one trailer I did watch because I'm like, I can't not watch this Dune trailer when it came out online a couple weeks ago. So, but yeah, so we have a couple of films that we greenlit. Probably wouldn't go see Antebellum. Probably my suggestion is that it's a bit of a pass. But seems like we're going to have a bit of a light week or so coming up, mostly just smaller VOD films coming out. But now we're going to be shifting gears into today's topic, which is talking about movie sequels. So I wanted to pose this question to both of you because say that, like we were just talking about one, Death of the Nile's coming out. And it's like, that got a sequel. Didn't realize that Murder on the Orient Express even made that much money, that they made a sequel to it. But thinking about, say you have a film that you absolutely love. When you find out there's going to be a sequel to it, what are some of the things that you hope a sequel will do for a film?
That's a great question. And, part of, some of the movies that I chose today, when I look at sequels, my hope is knowing what makes me love films. My hope is that they can still maintain, the intimacy of the characters that are involved. And that they can, of course, I want to see them, brought to different places. And it's crazy, but I also, believe it or not, I really want them to take risks. I want them to take risks. And I don't mind if they subvert my expectations and even, are willing to piss me off a little bit with what they do with some of those characters. Because you're making a new movie, a new film here. So when there's a sequel, I want them to take risks. I want them to take the character, obviously give those characters more challenges, that they haven't seen before. But it's got to be worth it. They have to be dealing with something personally that, for me, that I would be dealing with personally on my second adventure, on my second, leg of the journey, that has to resonate for me.
Very interesting perspectives. How about you, Matt?
For me to be interested in a sequel, I have to think, okay, so obviously the first movie has to be good, or the first book, or the first whatever has to be, okay, yeah, like definitely give me like a second helping. But then also it has to leave me in a state where it's kind of like, yeah, I could definitely see things moving forward. If you watch Perks of Being a Wallflower, you really, or at least I do, I really, really like that movie. But like, I can't see where some giant other incident would throw the main characters back to where they were when the first movie started, so then they can also retread everything again. So that's like the first thing. Definitely, the sequel needs to kind of like earn its existence by expanding, because if not, then I'm just gonna be bored. The second thing, I feel like a sequel, kind of like what Alex said with the subverting expectations thing, and kind of like, okay, we're gonna do something different, not just bigger, but also it's gonna be, I don't know, maybe we're gonna take the theme, we're gonna kind of like tweak it, or we're gonna have like this idea, which we didn't talk about at all at the first one, still the same characters, still the setting, or like whatever. Like the idea of kind of like making something, like taking what happened before and then making it bigger. So it's not just, I don't know, it was not just the same thing over and over again. And some movies do that well, but then some movies kind of just, you're like, okay, well, I gotta sort of like put that out of my head. All the Jaws sequels. Anything, like, literally anything you could think of. It was like, okay, wow, it's giant, but I would never buy the DVD. Like, I hate that feeling. So yeah, that's a sequel.
I definitely think that it has to go in a different direction in terms of like, there's very few sequels that I absolutely love that are like a quote unquote carbon copy of the first one. And like, it's interesting because I actually started showing Matt the Trip series, which is literally just Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon going on to different countries and eating food and just being themselves, like exaggerated versions of themselves. I know what to expect from those movies. But the thing is, they do pose different moral and thematic ideas to the bigger picture. But in the end, it's still them just eating, doing impressions, and giving each other shit for like an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes. And I'm like, I eat it up. I really enjoy it. It's just a fun time. But like for every series like that, there's like 50 Hangover Part 2s.
Right.
Where it's just like you just redo the same exact thing, and not even like 22 Jump Street, where it's like making fun of the fact that they're doing the same exact thing.
Sure.
And I like them to take risks and do something different with it. But what needs to be the same is I don't want to see the characters going back to the same exact place where they were at the beginning of the first film, because then you kind of you challenge them with you put new challenges in front of them, and then having consistent themes. And like I feel like the prototype sequels to be talking about in 2020, especially after this past December, would be the Star Wars sequels. Because just that reaction, how long a conversation you can have about films not being consistent in its own messaging and in portraying its characters. When, like, you have The Last Jedi that does something completely different and subverts your expectations, and then people get upset, and then you undo all of those, and then try to go exactly back to where you were with the first film with Rise of Skywalker. So, like, I feel like that's such a hot topic idea of what can possibly go wrong with sequels. Even though, and I know I've had this conversation with Matt, I really love The Last Jedi. Besides the Canto Bite sequence, which just feels like...
I like it too. It's one of my favorite Star Wars movies.
Like, it feels like the Canto Bite sequence feels like it's a different movie. And also doesn't...
It's fine. I was laughing and you were like that was funny.
But
let me real side note. I was working at a pizza place, when I was in California for a little bit, and it was one of those like fast fire pizza places. You're supposed to make the pizza like in minus 10 seconds because nobody can wait for a freaking pizza anymore. I started having someone comes in with a Star Wars shirt. So I say, hey, how did you like Last Jedi? With this goofy smile on my face. And they go, oh, I didn't like the romance and I didn't like the, and I'm like making the pizza like, oh, really? You didn't like it? Well, I really liked it, and it turned into this. The girl next to me was like, you better make that pizza faster and stop talking about Star Wars. And but I'm thinking to myself, this guy I'm making this pizza for is legit like getting red in the face because he really did not like Last Jedi. So that was a very interesting cultural divide with Last Jedi there.
How do you guys feel about Force Awakens then? So like that being a sequel, but it, at least for me, it did the retread thing for me too closely for me, and that made me frustrated because it was almost kind of like I have a chessboard and then I just sort of knock all the pieces over and then I put like similar looking pieces on there and then I just kind of play the same game over again. It's not even like a different game. It's like this, like many same looking characters, and then also like the same moves in terms of like how the story goes. And Shane looks like he's about to like just destroy everything I'm saying.
No. Honestly, like, so Force Awakens came out, and it is basically a rehash of it's like greatest hits of Star Wars, honestly, with some new characters and bringing back some old characters. And I love Force Awakens. It's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with that movie, and I really enjoyed a lot of the things they did with it. But I can take a step back and think, this isn't the most original Star Wars movie. And then Rian Johnson comes in, which that's a big part of it. The creative forces behind it. You don't get Rian Johnson to come in and do what you expect him to do. That's his thing. He literally makes movies that subverts your expectations of the genre that he's making. Looper, Knives Out. It's like, that's what he does. So that's what he did. And people wanted to see Luke Skywalker as this badass Jedi Master. But what they did with him was interesting. It wasn't like people wanted to see him be a like badass with a lightsaber and do all these things. But like they showed a broken man after 30 years since the last time you saw him, and people were mad. It's like they completely destroyed his character. It's like a lot can happen to a person in 30 years. It's like they're not always going to be the same exact person the last time you saw them. And like I understand why people got upset about it, because it was completely not what they expected. And then with Rise of Skywalker, they're like, oh crap. I'm going to take 2.5 hours, 45 minutes of which kind of forget The Last Jedi happened, do my own second movie, and then give us Return of the Jedi again.
And it's bigger. Yeah.
And it's bigger. So it's interesting because the Star Wars sequel trilogy has, you do the same exact thing, but bigger, and completely destroy all your expectations, and then people got mad either way. So I think that's the tricky thing about making sequels and why it's so hard to make a sequel, which I think is a nice segue into, I figured we each do like our good one, then we each do our bad one, and then we each talk about like, why did this sequel happen one. So Matt, what's your good sequel?
My good sequel is Spider-Man 2. Wow.
I didn't realize you liked Electro that much.
LOL.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Let me hit the button for you. Ow, like dude, that movie, it's such an interesting movie because it takes like a lot of the same things that happened in the first movie. So it has like the characters, it has like kind of like the unrequited stuff, like with the romance, it has like the action, but then like Spider-Man 2's version of bigger also means deeper. It doesn't, like Spider-Man 3's version of bigger means let's have more like villains, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But and also actually when I think about it too, it had like a little bit more like computer generated people too. There are a couple moments that haven't aged well, but even probably back then, like Spider-Man 3 came out, I was like, wait, why does James Franco look like Play-Doh? I don't know. But like Spider-Man 2 is an awesome movie because you get such a deeper look into what does it mean to be, for Peter, what does it mean to kind of like be a hero, but then also juggle wanting to be a little bit selfish, you know, like kind of like the human aspect of it, not just him becoming the hero, but him also kind of like remembering, oh crap, I still have a life that I have to, you know, I guess like navigate through. And then when one of those things or both of those things like screw up, then he has to figure out, well, how am I going to do both? Which is sad and it's not fair, but it is crazy entertaining to watch. And I think that movie is just talking about it on like the merits of how it is as a sequel, not so much about the movie itself, but like kind of like what does it do compared to where was it beforehand with the movie that came out before it. That's why I like that movie. That is a good sequel. What do you guys think of Spider-Man 2? I mean, if you guys say you hate it, I will literally leave the Zoom call.
I'm a huge fan of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, and like Spider-Man 3 in particular is a good example of what happens when you try to go too big and try to fit too much into it. What I love about Spider-Man 2 is it's safe in feeling that all you need to do is introduce a new and engaging conflict. Doesn't need to be a bigger conflict. Doesn't need to have multiple villains in it. And like they do start developing like Harry as an antagonist in the film. And it's an interesting progression because where the first film leaves him and where he goes in the second film drives him to building up to a new villain in the third one. So I liked that. But obviously your main focus is Doc Ock, and he's deep and tragic villain. And it really works. And it has everything you need in a Spider-Man film. And I agree that it takes a deeper look into the first film is where Peter's really trying to figure out what it means to be Spider-Man. And now, how important is it to him to be Spider-Man when you have something else that could potentially be fulfilling in your life? And I really enjoy the parts where he like turns away from being Spider-Man and really looking at what his life could be and realizing why being Spider-Man might be so important to him. And I feel like it does all of that without having to go into overkill. Like, you don't need 3 villains, like in the third one. It was just too much. Too much. So how about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think that's I always enjoyed Spider-Man 2. The scene on the subway car, you know? That scene in the subway car always almost makes me want to cry, actually. Wow, that really made I almost want to cry every time we start talking about movies. But no, they're like, he's just a kid, you know. He's just a kid. Like that breaks my heart. And there's something incredibly relatable when a superhero goes, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, you know what? Like this is like too much, because I think we feel that way in real life sometimes. And you know, it harks back to Superman 2 when Superman says, look, I love this woman, but I can't be with her unless I give my power up, you know. And, you know, he realizes he can't really have the things that a normal person can have because he's made this sacrifice. And it really resonates. And I think that they did a really good job in Spider-Man 2. We were all still on the bandwagon of, yeah, Spider-Man, this is awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting with because like in the first film, and I know Matt absolutely loves all of what Willem Dafoe did as Norman Osborn, where he's just such a hammy, crazy, fun villain. And why it's so important to give focus to your villains is in the second one, where you have those moments where you have Otto Octavius being like talked to by his like the mechanical arms, and like him being legit afraid and then paranoid. It's like films where you try to squeeze in too many villains, you don't get to have moments like that. And then those villains don't have as much depth. They're not as well executed. And the fact that that film, in a time when superhero movies were still getting really big at that point, and Spider-Man and the X-Men were really setting the tone. And they were like leaps and bounds in front of like Fantastic Four and like Daredevil, and showing what you could really do. And then unfortunately Spider-Man 3 did the thing of where it's like, well, we need more villains. We need 3 villains. And then how many movies have made that same mistake?
They usually make that mistake when they get to the third one for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And it's just like very rarely do superhero like, yeah, and just like X-Men did the same exact thing. That movie tried to do way too many things all at once.
You can argue, I really like the Dark Knight trilogy, but you have to admit, Dark Knight Rises sort of makes some of those same mistakes.
Could have just left it at Bane.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like it was perfect. It was perfect. And then you just had to, like, all right, it's just too much.
Not everyone's like Thor, where honestly the best one's the third one because they finally get somebody doing it who really gets it. And that's why we're getting a fourth Thor movie, because Taika Waititi.
That was fun. That was fun. The third Thor was a lot of fun.
All right, Alex, what's your good sequel?
My good sequel. Okay, so I actually was wrestling with picking I did not pick the Dark Knight for this video, but that was hard not to pick because it's damn near perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Okay.
Yeah, I chose Die Hard with a Vengeance because it's Die Hard 2 was good. People seem to give Die Hard 2 a pass, but Die Hard with a Vengeance, same director, John McTiernan, that they had in the first one, they didn't have for the second one. Before I get into my reasons why I picked that, real quick, I always, the action movie genre and action movie sequels, I can't help but think of video games a little bit because I used to love video games, and I used to play Zelda all the time. And one thing, I'll tie this in a second, but when you're finishing one game and then you start over on another, one thing that's always like the most daunting thing is looking at your inventory and being like, I don't have anything, like you're starting the game at zero. And with especially with action movie sequels and sci-fi movie sequels with these, or even superheroes with these characters who have these great abilities, you have to find a way to have them start basically at zero. And by the time we get to Die Hard with a Vengeance, we have a character played by Bruce Willis, John McClane, who is, as cool can be, and he's just always got something clever to say. And no matter what, he's going to jump out of the burning building. But in the beginning of the movie, he's one step away from being an alcoholic. One step. He hasn't, he's not shaved. He's separated from his wife. He's having a hangover. And the first scene, of course, he's in the middle of Harlem with that sign over his body. And so you've immediately put him in a situation where he's humiliated and he has immediate danger. This coolest action hero of the late 80s, early 90s is immediately, he just looks like a complete idiot, from the start of the movie. And he has to build back throughout the rest of that. And then, Sam Jackson, oh, by the way, Samuel L. Jackson, this is Samuel L. Jackson in his prime, coming hot off of Pulp Fiction, a couple years before Jackie Brown. He starts working with Dustin Hoffman, and he's working with all these big directors. And, Sam Jackson's amazing in the movie. So much great dialogue. The screenplay is really awesome. And the next scene when they're together with Sam Jackson, Bruce Willis, and they're on the phone with Simon, played by Jeremy Irons. You start to see Bruce Willis starting to care again. You're starting to see John McClane starting to care again. Like, I love killing these terrorist mother MFers. I love going after these guys. So you start seeing that dog in the fight again, and that's a really, really entertaining scene. It's really funny when they're on the phone with Simon. But later when he's when the phone call is over, and Walter, his commander, throws his badge back on the desk and says, here, are you asking me to be a cop again? It's like, Walter, are you asking me to be a cop again? He says, are you finished, Lieutenant? And he throws him the badge. It's like, okay, he still got it. He's still that guy, but he has to build up for the rest of the movie in sort of, becoming John McClane again. you know, because he spends, you know, the first, you know, 45 minutes, 60 minutes in the movie getting his ass kicked, getting humiliated, being told by Samuel L. Jackson that he's out of shape, you know. And so as the movie goes on, it's really funny. And then you slowly start to see him get back into being the guy who saved everybody in LA, you know.
Mhm.
And then of course, you know, the thing with this sequel is this whole idea of, you know, Simon being the brother of Alan Rickman's character in the first Die Hard. You know, they didn't have to put that in there. I think it still would have been a good movie, but they put it in there, and it almost gives it just a little more weight to everything that's going on. It's just this little thing that they threw into the screenplay to kind of tie in the first movie to the third movie. But they don't, you know, kind of, you guys are talking about, oh, going to the same places and being repetitive. They don't spend too much time on it. They have a scene in the truck. The FBI reveals to him, hey, you killed this guy's brother. You threw him off the building. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the one shot of him falling out of the building.
That's right. And it's almost more famous to me than the first time you see it in the first movie.
And you just see the look on John McClane's face, and he's just like,
rings a bell. Yeah. rings a bell. And so now you have that weight to it. And that's like halfway through the film. It's halfway through the film when that's revealed to you. So it's just a very clever script. Originally it wasn't going to be a Die Hard movie. I think it was going to be called Simon Says.
Yeah.
And then they were like, okay, let's make this into a Die Hard movie.
The first Die Hard movie started as a different script too.
For real? I did not know that.
And it was supposed to be a sequel to a Frank Sinatra film.
Interesting.
And Frank Sinatra was just like, I don't want to do this.
It was gonna have Frank Sinatra in it. Oh my god! No, they're Jersey boy. You know, Jersey in the house.
It's and the thing is, I never got, like, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, which, like, obviously Rotten Tomatoes, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but like Die Hard with a Vengeance has a rotten rating, and I'm just like, why? And like Die Hard 2 has a higher rating. And so is Live Free and Die Hard.
Yeah.
And then we don't talk about the fifth one. That doesn't exist. But like, I love that Die Hard with a Vengeance does do something different. Like Die Hard 2, Die Hard at an airport.
Yeah,
like,
pretty
you
much.
Literally describe it that way. You can't easily describe this movie in that way. Mm-hmm. And I like that fact. It does something different. And then the introduction of Zeus, such a great character. Yeah. And that dynamic is so great.
Why didn't they bring him back? I was like, you know, I would have loved to see Sam Jackson come back, even like for like a part of the movie in the next one. I'm like, what? You know, even Sam Jackson's got to be sitting there going, come on, guys.
Well, and one of the great things about the first one is that camaraderie that he builds with Reginald VelJohnson's character. And like, that's a nice piece of Die Hard. And then in the second one, like, he makes a phone call, and that's basically it.
That's all you get. Like, he was great. He was great.
Yeah. And you get some of that because, like, what makes John McClane such a great action hero is he's an everyman. He's just a dude. Except in Live Free and Die Hard, where they make him a superhero, and he's, like, jumping off of jets and all kinds of stuff like that. And it's just like he cares so much, and it makes sense that he makes these connections with these other people in that situation. And he builds that camaraderie with people. Even though, like, especially in the second one, which I love the fact that, like, because what arc did he go on in the second one? Nothing. He's just John McClane in it. This one, he actually has progress to be made. And it made the story more interesting.
In the second one, once again, he just has to kind of convince the authority people around him to work with him because of what's really going on. Mm-hmm. And that works for that movie, but it's like you said, it's just kind of a passable sequel. It's like, oh, okay, B-, but it doesn't do anything. No, Die Hard 2 doesn't really do anything to take the character anywhere new. whereas Die Hard with a Vengeance certainly takes you another place. And you have the original director, back.
And like John McTiernan's a really talented director. Between those two and Predator, like he's made some fantastic films. Too bad he did terrible things and went on house arrest.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so he doesn't really have a career anymore. So, but
role model he is not.
Matt, do you have anything to add about Die Hard with a Vengeance?
Well, it's interesting. So when I saw the second one, when I saw the second Die Hard, I remember like halfway through, I was kind of like checking my phone. I started texting. I was like, "This isn't for me." This almost felt like if the first movie was a really awesome action movie, the second one was kind of like a, I don't know. It's like a bunch of like action figures are sort of like going, you know what I mean? Especially the way the ending, but even just like in general, and also I'm trying to do this, but like there's like random things that don't make any sense. It's like, wait, why is there gas with why don't they just move? I don't, just like random stuff. For the third one, I remember watching the third one. I saw like the second one and the third one like on the same day, and I think that giant explosion in the beginning of the third one, and it's like, oh crap, this is like extremely serious. It went from like this action movie inside of this building to like, I don't know, like some Saturday morning like crap, and then the third one is kind of like, no, like this is like really like immediate and serious, and like everything that's happening has like extreme consequences. Also, there's like this giant puzzle that you're gonna have to solve with the characters.
I use that water jug problem in my classes sometimes.
What happened?
I use the water jug problem in some of my math classes. Because it's a good math problem.
As long as you don't do
really
that. What is that experiment inside of the police station when he like makes that giant explosion? You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, where he like mixes and like
yeah.
he throws a
That's why you're not doing that.
But like,
I still don't understand what the lady's saying to him after Charlie, I'm gonna blah blah blah. I don't know what. I don't know what she's saying.
I'm glad Matt brought up the beginning because it's like that hot town, summer in the city, and just like kicks into that, and just like got that city vibe, and then all of a sudden that explosion comes out of nowhere, and you're just like, oh crap, I'm in for like, it grabs you like that. And you know this is serious. And like to Matt's point, it's like it hooks you from the very start. And I think that was a bold choice to how to start that movie. And it's like, you're in some shit now from the very start. And it kind of has that feeling. Like John McClane's ripped out of like whatever rock he was hung over under. And like, or mattress maybe. But like he gets like dragged off and like he gets thrown right into it. And it's interesting.
It's such a New York movie. It's so New York. Oh my God.
But so I talked about this film actually in our first video because I couldn't resist talking about this, is Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay.
And this is one of those sequels where it really works because it just goes bigger. Because I feel like Fury Road takes this world that could only be realized to a point based off of budget and when it was made in like the early 80s, where maybe George Miller had this grand design but could only do so much when he was making, say, Road Warrior. And then Fury Road, just like some person over at Warner Brothers is like, this movie needs $150 million. Let's just write that check out there. And they go for it. And they throw everything. Like, what movie is this? There is a guy wearing the face of his dead mother with a giant guitar with flames shooting out of it. Because that's the backstory. So literally every single minor character in this movie has a crazy backstory like that. And that's the Doof Warrior, which you don't hear him speak. You don't hear anyone interact with him except when Max falls on his like playing platform and is like wrestling with his guitar with him. Well, yeah, that's his mother's face. because Immortan Joe found him next to his dead mother and took him in, raised him, and that guy wears his mother's face. Because, you know, because like I have
the
a
worst
big
example of foster parenting I've ever heard in my entire life.
So like I have a book that's all of the storyboards and everything. And George Miller made all these notes about all these characters with all these crazy weird details. And all the actors knew them, but we didn't have to have them told to us. We just know this is a crazy world. And the thing is, it takes on new themes. Like, it really takes shots at religion and governments and dictators and just this figurehead, which Immortan Joe is a disgusting, decaying mess of a human being, except he has this facade on that fools everyone. And it's a very interesting perspective to look at the world today. And I'm just going to leave it at that in terms of like this figurehead where he convinces people they don't need water because it makes you weak. And just that, and the fact that it's bold enough to put this other character at the forefront, even though it's a Mad Max movie, which I know a lot of men's rights groups got really pissed off because this was like a feminist movie, and that Max wasn't the forefront of the movie. To be fair, if you ever watched a Mad Max sequel, he's never at the forefront. He's a tertiary character. That's really his thing. He's like a myth that other people are telling his story and how he's involved in their adventures and their journeys. And it goes bigger, it goes crazier, and after legitimately it was over 30 years since the last film came out with Thunderdome, which tonally didn't really fit with the first two films. And like, I enjoy Thunderdome, don't love Thunderdome, but this really takes it back to the basics and just runs with it. And it's so imaginative. There's so many little details. It doesn't need to beat you over the head with any messaging or like there's really no exposition in this movie. And it just goes for it. And it's that ambitious of a film and just knows the world of Mad Max. It knows what Max is, and also made Max slightly more interesting because I thought it was like the choice of him being legitimately haunted in his own mind, where this guy probably has PTSD through all of the stuff he's been through. Like him like seeing like these dead people was shocking, and like how it was portrayed in the film was like looked like a fever dream. And just Tom Hardy does a great job. All he really needs to do is grunt and just like, my name is Max. And like ever so often throw in a little line somewhere. It's like, my world is fire and blood. It's like all he needs to do is like say 10 things in the whole movie, and the rest of the things is him just grunting and yelling at people. Or grunt like when he has like the mask on, which like obviously Tom Hardy does his best acting when you cover up his face, right? Because he does it in almost every movie now. So, but it just worked so well and introduced so many crazy characters, and just it felt like 30 years had passed and George Miller finally could make the sequel he really wanted to make. And I can only hope that the Wasteland happens, which is the next one. But we'll see. I just hope it's not another 30
you would give that like a 6 out of 10? Would you say you would give that a 6 out of 10?
If you're saying a 10 out of 6, yes. I'll go with that math. But yeah, so it's just everything that I was hoping for in a Mad Max sequel, it delivered. And I'm just like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. So can't argue with it.
I went to the movie theater when it came out. Like I saw it with somebody, and the person that leans over to me, because they hadn't seen any of the other movies, and they go, what's going on? And I was like, just keep watching it. There's like, the reason why it's so over the top is because like it's kind of like what I was talking about with the 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it's kind of like, all right, show me something interesting. Okay, wow, do it again, but better. Oh wow, do it one more time, and like it just like keeps the creativity of topping yourself over and over again. Let's have like this giant chase scene. Okay, let's have it in a sandstorm. Okay, let's have like Charlize Theron be like this like, I don't know. Okay, that is a person that I would actually want like an action figure for. Like she's actually really cool. I don't know. Everything is just so awesome and crazy, and then they go on this long adventure, and then it's like, okay, wait, let's go back to this other place, and that's also interesting because you would think that like, wait, what? Why? It works.
Because like legitimately, if you map out the plot of this movie, it's really basic, but you don't think about it because you're just so caught up in it. And
the visuals, I have not seen a more colorful movie. It's almost like it's like taking like a painter's palette and just like smearing it on a camera and just like watching like people just like run across the paint. It's the reds and the blues and the yellows and everything is like super vibrant and crazy, and that's the whole movie. Fantastic. What happened?
It's at Happy Feet. Like George Miller had the same crazy color palette in that movie, and he's like, you know what? Let's make Mad Max like that too. And then it's just like, how'd that work? It did. So, but
yeah. It's Charlize Theron. She found the fountain of youth, and she's a fantastic actor. Oh my God, she does. You know, she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. And yeah, no, I need to see this one again. I saw this one in 3D, I think, and I almost kind of. I'm not a big fan of 3D, so I kind of wish I didn't. But I need to see it again from start to finish on like a nice screen, Blu-ray. Like really absorb it again, but it doesn't let you breathe for a second. It is, you know, it's nonstop.
Yeah, the horrible 3D shot towards the end of the film when like that steering wheel like woo, like shoots off, like you can tell it was made for a 3D shot, for a 3D version of the movie, and it's just like, don't do that to me. You did this so well for so long.
So there is a flaw. That shot.
That shot gets me every time. It's obnoxiously CGI'd, and it's just like, you know, they threw that in there just because they wanted to sell 3D tickets to this movie. I'm just like, you didn't have to do that. My thing is like, I hate 3D because like, if this movie's that engrossing, I don't need it to literally come out at me. So, alrighty, let's time to talk about some bad stuff. How about you, Matt? What's your bad sequel?
Okay, so when you think about a sequel, and it's like, okay, so we can't have the same movie over and over again. No one's gonna pay to watch that. Okay, what if we take the same movie and we just like hook it up to like an air pump and we just make it, just inflate everything? Okay, that's interesting. Or hear me out. Let's just screw around. Guys, this movie is not a good movie. The movie that I'm choosing for my bad pick is Alien Resurrection. This movie, the third movie didn't really need to happen in my opinion. So like this movie definitely didn't need to happen. I felt like the first two sort of like, they were so different from each other because what the first one wanted to do, at least what it got out of me, was wonder and horror. So kind of like, I think like the first two like words you would think of when you think of like Jurassic Park or something. It's like wonder and horror. Like everything that I'm seeing on this screen looks so like the world, this ship that you created is so like intricate and like practical and beautiful, and like all the characters are so like, oh, like everything is cool. You get it? So like that's the wonder, and then the fear is like whatever the hell, because there's an alien running around killing people. But the second movie is horror but action, because it's a lot more aliens. It's
A lot more James Cameron.
yeah, it's a lot more. Why is Avatar like 2 coming? I don't. Why is that happening? But that's another video. But Alien 2, Aliens, that was a really cool movie because it kind of made you feel like, you know, like the game over, man. Like it made like everything was so
Game
super
over,
cool.
man.
Yeah, like everything was so super cool, and it was like, all right, yeah, like it's like a fist pumping type movie. Alien 1, you don't really fist pump to it. The Alien Resurrection, like it's so, yeah, I really don't like the way that it look. I don't like there's like certain, like the monsters like do stuff and I don't like them. The characters are so kind of like grotesque personality wise. I don't like that. I feel like the only redeeming like thing is I'm almost positive Sigourney Weaver, when she does that backwards hook shot when she's walking away and then she like makes the basket. Watch that scene and you'll see that like the camera has her and Ron Perlman, and then the camera has to kind of like move kind of like that because they didn't want him reacting, which was a giant laugh. They didn't want him reacting on frame, so he kind of like looks back at like the camera and everybody, I guess like the crew behind. I don't know, that's funny, but yeah, I don't know, and like why does it need to be made? It just wasn't good. I didn't get any wonder. I wasn't scared. It was just a bloody, angry, ugly movie, and that's not good enough for me to like buy the DVD of, unless Walmart sort of forces me to
buy them all together.
Box set.
So I'm gonna take the alien memes guy. Aliens plus humans. Hybrids. Because that was the weirdest part of that movie. And I'm like, I didn't need to see this weird human, like all those clones of Ripley and like how all those failed clones. I'm just like, why does every sci-fi sequel have to try to combine humans with whatever else is in this movie? Jurassic World did it. Why do we need human dinosaur hybrids? Why do we need human alien hybrids? Like, why? And what really frustrates me about that movie is Cara. No, it's not Caro. 2 French directors made City of Lost Children and Delicatessen. One of them made this movie. And like it has his look to it. Like it has the same visual look to his films. And Ron Perlman was in City of Lost Children. So like that's why I wasn't surprised Ron Perlman was in this.
Was it good or bad?
But like their films are great. Those 2 films are really impressive sci-fi movies. And like this just felt like a weird combination of his vision and trying to fit it into an alien movie. And it just didn't look right. Like even the look of the movie just feels off-putting. Like from a cinematography perspective, something just looks weird and off about it.
Well, it's
Besides
dark.
the fact that everything part of the story was weird and off-putting. But that's a whole other story.
Like, it was like so much dark and shadow, and just it's okay to have like one thing be like the main thing, like Antebellum. We saw what I heard about Antebellum was that there's like a lot of parts where it's like very violent and it's very kind of like morose or whatever. But then if you don't have like these random bright spots that contrast like this thing that's kind of like this present whatever the hell, like if you don't have something that's different, then almost kind of like that dark stuff can't be highlighted by the light stuff. This Alien Resurrection, it's so ugly and there's no beauty in it. And for me, like I do think that Alien actually does have like some beauty in it. Like
Scott,
even when it comes down to like the creature design. Yeah, what happened?
Those like the Geiger designs.
Yeah, like that's really awesome. Like that's one of those movies where it's like, show me something I've never seen before. Damn it, you did it 2 times. And then you get scared by like the end of the movie. I don't know. This movie wasn't scary. It didn't. I don't know what it wanted to do, but which is bad. I don't know what it was trying to say. If it was trying to say anything, how it wanted to justify itself as a sequel. So I don't know what it was trying to do, and whatever I tried to put on top of it, like it didn't stick. I tried to throw it at the wall, it didn't stick. This is a good movie. It's an action movie. It didn't stick. It's a good horror movie. It didn't stick. It's sci-fi. Didn't stick. What was that? Winona Ryder?
Yeah.
Right?
It might have been it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Might have had something to do with it. I was waiting for you to say it.
Yeah, like I wonder if she like thinks back and it's like, damn, like why was I?
I don't like myself either.
I just felt bad for Sigourney Weaver. I'm like, you literally were nominated for Best Actress for playing this character in Aliens. And this is where they took your character.
Yeah. Well, you
They
know,
should have her hair back.
this is such, I tell you, because when it's so interesting with these sequels, because the first one obviously was directed by Ridley Scott, who throughout his career was inconsistent, but he's also made some amazing classic movies. Alien was a game changer, you know, when it came out. I mean, everybody loved that film in the late 70s. I was there, obviously. No.
Yep.
But it's interesting because you mentioned Aliens and Alien 3, because it kind of takes a journey from sci-fi horror to, well, come over here. No, over here. Sci-fi horror to sci-fi action to, I don't know what Fincher was trying to do with 3, but there was a good movie in there. There was somewhere in there that was a good movie. And then I don't know what Resurrection is. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be.
So Joss Whedon wrote it. He was one of the writers on this film. And if I'm not mistaken, he said that Jeanette, that was the director, had a completely different outlook on what this film was going to be compared to the script, and did not realize the script that he had in front of him. It just, because like I expected there to be probably more humor, and like you could tell there's supposed to be some humor somewhere in this movie, but like how it was played didn't work. You can tell it's like sometimes you have a great script and the director has a completely different perspective on what this script's supposed to be, and then it just gets messy. And I think that's really what this film was.
Yeah.
But Alex, what was your bad sequel?
That was a good one. That was a really interesting one. So, all right, I don't know how controversial this is going to be, but so my bad sequel, and one of the reasons I picked this one is because, one, this was the first one that came to mind because I had such high expectations, as I'm sure a lot of people did. And it's also similar to the Alien pick. It's also because the first movie was so freaking good. It's probably it wasn't on my top 10, but this is going to play into a future podcast with you two. So my pick for a bad sequel, despite the stuff that might be nice about it, is The Matrix Reloaded.
Hi, Matt.
No, I thought you were going to leave.
I closed the lid like.
I am sorry. So my friend Greg, because we got done jamming, you know, and he said, "So what are you going to pick?" And I said, "Well, the first thing that comes to mind is The Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolution's one of those two." And he said, "Well, I think that's kind of underrated, actually." And I thought to myself, you know, I was lying in bed and I was like, I can't pick anything else. And here's the reason why. I'm going to go back to the last shot of the first Matrix movie, because that movie is so grounded and real and relatable, and it just resonates, and it's so tense and suspenseful every minute of it, you know. The last shot of the movie is him flying toward the camera, and it's the only shot of the movie where I turn to people and I go, I mean, I know what it is now, but at the time, for years, I'd be like, what is that? What the fuck is that last shot? What's happening there? And like, I think someone in my family was like, yeah, he's flying. Oh, huh? You know? So, you know, I was like, wait a second. So, and this goes back to what I was saying about, you know, your hero in these especially, this is sci-fi action, truly sci-fi action, great sci-fi action. My heroes need to start with nothing in their inventory. They need to start with like having to have this mountain to climb, because it's so much more compelling as a viewer to see it grow from the beginning. But he is just slaying from start to finish. He is the man. He is Superman on steroids. And I look, well, I'll say this: there's wonderful action set pieces, wonderful choreography, amazing filmmaking on display from an action standpoint. But you have lost me from that last shot of the first film. And, in the beginning of this film, these characters, I just can't really relate to them anymore. The film is, the movie rather, is so big. The world that they open up to me is so much bigger. They're revealing all these things to me at once that I have lost my very intimate, close connection with the character, the suspense that he was going through, and really that feeling of danger that they had me in for the whole first one. They've done a lot of things right, because obviously things are bigger and the stakes are bigger. But for me as a filmmaker, when you're making these sequels, you're growing this world. Your job is to grow that world while simultaneously keeping me in touch with the main character. And they really lost me. They were trying to be ahead of their time, I think, with a lot of what they were doing. That Agent Smith battle, where he's battling like 60 or 70 Agent Smiths.
Which was fine until they all started turning into ragdolls.
Yeah, exactly. They turn into, he's slaying them. He is slaying them. And it doesn't age. It just didn't age well. The first Matrix, for the most part, pretty much holds up. It's amazing. But I think they were biting off more than they could chew. And the final product for me just doesn't, it didn't look like it, I didn't look real when I first saw it, when the movie first came out. And so for me, it's one of the biggest, it's one of those things. Is it a really bad movie? No. But because the first one was so freaking good, game changer good, it had an impact on our culture, for crying out loud. I had to have it be a bad sequel to that one.
How I feel about Revolutions and Reloaded is kind of like, if I want to see The Matrix, I will probably watch the whole movie. But if I want to see like the two sequels, I'll probably just go on YouTube and look at like clips. And there are some awesome clips, but like I agree with you. Like I couldn't call like a collection of clips that like also like have a story, but you sort of like forget about the story because you really just want to see like Morpheus like on top of a truck and then jumping off of the truck and then cars flipping and then like all this stuff and there's ghosts. That sounds really cool, but it looks really cool. But like the connective tissue to kind of get like from like cool moment to cool moment, if that's not interesting, then that's not really a good movie. That's just like, those are just cool clips. So yeah, for me, I get what you're saying. It hurts for me to say that. I'm very mad at you that you made me say that, but
and it's being recorded.
It's recorded.
It's interesting because like I know so many people. Once the architect, that's him, right? The man in the white suit, like explaining his whole entire thing at the end of Matrix Reloaded, and doing that whole entire thing in such a confusing way, except it's an interesting idea what he poses, which it's been done in other movies in a much more straightforward way and is really impactful. Like I remember like when I watched Snowpiercer for the first time, it has a similar idea in it. And I was shocked and like it hurt to find that out in Snowpiercer. In Matrix Reloaded, you're just like, I need to sit and think about what he said for like 2 hours before I conceptualize what he meant. And then by that time, the movie's been over for an hour and 45 minutes. So then it's like, you don't really get the gravity of what it's saying there. They were cool ideas. And there's a lot of mythology and philosophy that goes into those sequels, like Grail lore. Like the whole entire thing with the Frenchman is like an allegory for the Holy Grail and stuff like that. With like, I've read like articles about the stuff that goes into it. I'm just like, they put way too much thought into a lot of these things that most people are not even going to think twice about. And unfortunately, like the third one just turns into a giant mech suit battle and one of the few live action Dragon Ball Z fights. Because legitimately that's what that fight between Neo and Agent Smith is in the last movie. And they make fun of it in the Honest trailer. And it looks shot for shot like a fight from Dragon Ball Z. And I'm like, oh, I see. Like, it's cool. But like,
you've got all these wonderful elements. And when you just brought up that scene, you know, when he meets the architect, I like the way it was lit, way it was shot. I mean, it's beautiful. I remember going, wow, you know, like I was really amazed by that.
With all the TVs.
It's one of these three elements of like all the stuff that doesn't really glue together all that well as a coherent film. You know, that's the problem. And, you know, yeah, it's just a much bigger movie than I think it should have been, you know, that's all.
Well, I'm going to take things in a different direction because we're going to talk about a legitimate dumpster fire here. So, and that's Caddyshack 2.
Oh, God. I never saw that.
I never saw this.
Don't.
On purpose.
So this has a 7 on Metascore. Isn't that out of 100? I'm pretty sure it is. So that's a 7. Even IMDb, there's a 3.8 out of 10. And this movie, I could have talked about it for this, like the last piece, like why was this a sequel? But I have a much more interesting one to talk about. But this one is just, nobody came back except for Chevy Chase. And he's just a supporting character who doesn't look like he wants to be there, and he's probably getting paid a lot of money. And like, Bill Murray's not in it. Bill Murray is replaced. Who the hell even played? Like, basically, they took a bunch of like crappier versions of characters from the first one. Like Dan Aykroyd basically replaced Bill Murray in this. Randy Quaid's in this. And like Jackie Mason is the main character in this. And here's what worked about the first Caddyshack. It's about a kid. And like there's all of these like crazy supporting characters, but it's a relatable story about this kid dealing with like teenage crap, but he kind of gets in over his head and gets involved in this craziness about like blue collar versus white collar kind of wealth and different stuff like that with impeccable comedy. Like Chevy Chase, one of the best he's been. He's just so effortlessly cool in that movie. Bill Murray is just, because like so many of the time Bill Murray is playing might be the smartest person in the room and just a complete asshole to everybody and just so snarky about it. In this, he's a complete buffoon, but like is so funny. And then Rodney Dangerfield is just electricity in Caddyshack. Literally everything he says. They replace him with Jackie Mason, who becomes the main character. And they beat you over the head with this white collar versus blue collar thing. Like, he shouldn't be there because, you know, he's Jewish. And, like...
His impressions.
And it's just not funny. Like, doesn't bring any of the characters back. So these are all brand new characters that are, like, 5-cent version of whole dollar versions of the people in the original movie. And just everything didn't work. And it gets bigger over the top. Like, the whole thing is like the main character buys the country club and turns it into like a fun house, mini golf looking kind of monstrosity. And it's stupid, it's over the top, and it's ridiculous, and lost the charm of all of the sharp humor of the first movie and any relatability in it. Like, there's a running gag of Jackie Mason, who's like this tiny guy riding a Clydesdale during like doing equestrian stuff, and like the horse is making like and they like make these fake like they're not horse noises. Horses don't make noises like that, and just so dumb.
Wait, I have to mute my mic to laugh.
So dumb.
Okay, I'm back.
So, public service announcement: there's no Caddyshack 2. There's only one. The other one didn't happen.
We should definitely get a button with that, with those horse sounds. You know, the button for development hell. We need a horse.
Basically, I'm just like, you can't even watch the scene because I'm like, I need to mute this. It sounds so stupid.
Yeah. Oh man. I'll be honest with you, Shane. I was never a big fan of the first one.
Then you're definitely not going to be a fan of this one.
I'm not going to like the second one, but people swear by the first one. People love it. I'm always like, every time I try to watch it on TV, I don't know, maybe I would dig it now, but growing up, I could never get into it.
I like watching that movie. I love, but like Rodney Dangerfield, like basically everything out of his mouth is just like,
he's so natural. He was always just himself and everything, and that can be a bad thing, but in his case he was just so natural.
He like grabs on the Judge Smale's wife and he's just like, I bet you were a good thing before electricity.
Yeah, that was these who else? I mean, he was
like, who wants to earn $5 the hard way? And just like, because he's like acting like she's a prostitute. And just like everything about it, and he's like, he gets hit by a wall. He's like, oh, fractured my arm, and just random stuff like that. And even Ted Knight as Judge Smales, just like, well, we're waiting. Like, I just love that. Like, I quote that on a semi-regular basis. They even use that in the Star Wars Family Guy episodes. They cut away and have that as a gag from it. But yeah, this movie has no merit or value at all. It's just like it's like a black hole of creativity. That's basically what I could say Caddyshack 2 is. You're gonna leave it at that. Hey Matt, what was your like the ugly? What's the one sequel you thought of that's just like, why is this even a thing?
All right, so
good, bad, why?
Like, to be extra mean to the movie, I decided not even to watch it all the way through. Because I'm a jerk. But I chose for the ugly. I chose American Psycho 2. It has Mila Kunis, who. Well, let me back up. I want to say why I like the first movie, so I can express why the second movie, or at least the idea that there needs to be a second movie, whatever. It's gonna be why that's like just like a very, very large mistake. So the first movie is really interesting, kind of like just microscope, just like looking at this guy, like you understand like everything about him, like his romantic relationships, his work, like how he navigates, like, like when he like gets out and like talks to other people, you understand his own inner psyche, kind of like you understand and there's like weird struggle that he has with what he's doing, but then also he doesn't, like, and then you see all of this stuff in very, very like vivid detail. You don't really see a lot of movies that have like kind of like this I don't know, you follow the villain almost kind of like we were talking about Taxi Driver like a couple weeks ago, where it's kind of like, oh yeah, you're gonna follow him, like that's your guy from like opening to closing credit, like that's your guy. he's gonna like hurt a lot of people, and but he's gonna have like this amazing monologue that like I YouTube probably like every once in a while just I really like how he just like how Christian Bale just delivers this ending thing. He has the first movie has like this really interesting cast of people. You definitely has William Dafoe in it. You understand the reason why the story is important, because it's not just a slasher movie, but it's also sort of like talking about how if you value certain, kind of like how Alice, when you were talking about like Wolf of Wall Street, you're talking about how like some people, if you choose to value like money and success, or even like kind of like victimizing to get ahead, or to kind of like make those things like your character traits, or if that is even like a metaphor for like that entire time period. Apparently that's what the book was like somewhat about, kind of like making reference to like all of that. Like that's like a really awesome movie. Like you take the idea of a decade, you put it in like, you embody it in a serial killer, and then like by the end you make that decade/serial killer remorseful for what it did, which I don't know if actually that's what ended up happening, like in terms of like how his story, like history goes. I don't think we've become more remorseful of what we did.
I think we're paying for the 80s.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess we're still paying, or maybe we didn't pay yet. I don't know. But that's the reason why I like the first movie. It's a really cool, awesome movie. Also, you get a couple of interesting songs, and a couple of interesting songs / album.
Question.
Yeah.
Is there any Huey Lewis in the News in the sequel?
Okay, so the sequel, reason why, no.
If there's not, then why'd it get made?
So yeah, so the reason why the sequel, if all of that stuff is like up here, at least for me anyway, like all that stuff is up here. The reason why it's such a bad idea is that like from the jump, you kill off your main character from the last movie. So like, because what's going on is that Christian Bale gets killed by this little girl who, oh no, she's a serial killer, and that's Mila Kunis's character. I think he was in the process of like killing her parents, or I don't know, something like weird and random, whatever. So you take all of that stuff, you take like the metaphors, and you take the intriguing like interactions with people, and the cool writing with the dialogue, which was like funny and like witty and weird, and I don't know, it's like off. And you put that in like this movie that you would probably only watch 15 minutes of on TNT, and then you would kind of just like either fall asleep, or you would just turn it off and hopefully I don't know, do anything that's better than that. Like, it's such an unnecessary movie. I don't even know why they would think that they would capitalize on whatever fans that the first movie like sort of like hooked. I have no idea why they would say, okay, so it's almost kind of like if I don't know, if like one of the Star Wars movies, like the first Star Wars movie, okay, you like Han Solo? Okay, the second one, so he dies, okay? All right, so they get used to that. But you're gonna have this other Han Solo-like character played by, I don't know, Shia LaBeouf or something like that. I don't know, some BS. And then it's like, okay, like fall in love with that.
Wait, what? Wait a minute. Are you talking about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Matt? Is that
I'm talking about both movies. Like, if that movie had a sequel, could you imagine how awful that would be? The good thing, like at the end of that movie, he like took his hat back at his wedding. But
well, we are getting another one.
They are getting another one?
Yeah.
No, but with Shia LaBeouf.
Oh no, they're not bringing him back.
I wouldn't want that.
Okay.
Shia LaBeouf is actually grateful that he's not going to be in that.
Didn't he like get pissed off?
I am sure he doesn't want to be in it. He has much other better things he can be doing with his time.
He's doing some good work now, but 10, 15 years from now, no, everybody hated him because he was, like you just said, he was playing everybody's heroes. They didn't want him. Then we didn't want him to be those characters.
Yeah,
we don't want you to be the next Indiana Jones. We didn't ask for this.
And we also don't want
Harrison Ford's still alive. How dare you?
So it sounds like, I remember seeing the marketing for this with Mila Kunis on it, and it sounds like they're giving it the kind of like the not Freddy Krueger, but Jason, Halloween type horror movie treatment to a movie that was not a horror movie. Yes, you can make arguments that there's elements of horror. This isn't a horror movie. This is part social commentary, part psychological thriller. I mean, it's a really warped kind of movie, the first American Psycho. If you could get Christian Bale to reprise the role in a different film, but not call it American Psycho, that would be the way to go with this. Instead of having like a part two, like Godfather Part 2, as opposed to going the Halloween Michael Myers route, like when you were describing, he gets killed by this person and then they become the American Psycho. I'm like, what is this? Some Friday the 13th Part 4, Take Back Manhattan bullshit that I'm here. That's what that sounds like.
Manhattan.
Yeah,
it's in space.
Yeah.
Jason in space, like that's what that sounds like. It's they gave it this very B movie, C movie treatment to a movie that was actually saying a whole lot more. I think because it's cheap, it's easy, it's throwaway. It's unfortunate. It's kind of unfortunate but bringing Christian Bale back to do this again would be kind of tough. But if you can't get Bale, don't make it. Don't even bother unless you can get Aaron Sorkin to write this really cool Wall Street Killer movie. Don't even do it. But instead, just we're gonna make a C movie, so let's just put it out there. Mila Kunis is hot, so put her on the cover.
That's probably 99% of the reason why this got greenlit.
Yeah, unfortunately. And it's a shame because she is a beautiful woman, but I wish that she chose better roles and she was a better actor outside of the whiskey commercials that she does.
Jupiter Ascending.
What's that?
Jupiter Ascending. We could talk a lot about that one.
Yeah.
So Alex, what is your ugly sequel?
I have such a generic one. I couldn't think of. I don't see enough. And I saw you text me that, man. I was like, oh man, I don't see enough really shitty movies. Or I don't see enough movies in general. So that's why this pod is good for me. But the one I'm choosing, I had to choose Batman and Robin. I had to choose Batman and Robin.
We're making a cartoon here. Come on. We're making a cartoon.
Basically. And so and this kind of runs along the theme because Joel Schumacher, rest his soul, passed away in June, I believe. He made some good movies. He did a movie I always like called Phone Booth with Colin Farrell. It's a very intense, suspenseful movie. Forrest Whitaker and Kiefer Sutherland, and he did A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel Jackson. That was a really Sandra Bullock, I think.
They deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
Yeah, I mean,
I love you, Shade.
One of my favorite Samuel Jackson quotes, him sitting on that. In that during that trial and just yelling that, and I'm just like, yes, they did.
I forgot that was from that movie. But man, Batman Forever was already and then it had some okay moments, but then this was just it's just a great example. This I've been talking about starting at zero and people being too powerful and not being this just doesn't even care about any of that. This is just celebrities dressing up like superheroes. And it just, I don't know. There's really not much else for me to say. It's just thrown together. It's all for the money,
There's plenty for you to say, Alex, because you didn't once say a single ice-related pun while talking about this movie. We killed the dinosaurs, the Ice Age.
That's right. Time to chill.
It's time to chill.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. Well, yeah.
See, Burton had a vision a fully realized vision of Batman and Batman Returns.
Mhm.
Apparently, there's a much darker cut of Batman Forever. Like, there is a darker version of that movie that Warner Brothers is like, we want to make this more marketable. So you throw in crazy colors because, like, Burton movies were very German expressionist, gothic looking, like all blacks, whites, and grays. And now they look like Batman and Robin looks like somebody threw up a rainbow somewhere and then threw some nips on some Batman. Just go along with it because why not?
If you ever watched any of they were actually kind of fun when I was a kid. Like the way Six Flags Great Adventure used to do their like live Batman performances, you know, with Batman chasing the Joker and stuff. It's kind of like they got the production design people from those sets to do the production design on these movies, you know, and they just put like all these pink and like purple lights underneath everything. And it's just, you know, it's just like there are no characters that you can really like get into, you know. And these are not like I like George Clooney, like he's a good actor, but he's, you know, terrible.
The most vanilla superhero ever. There was literally zero substance to Bruce Wayne or Batman in that movie.
Yeah.
Like he was just a person in a Batman costume. That's basically it.
Yeah,
and like
does nothing for the Batman character.
Completely lost what Mr. Freeze was. Like he's such an intriguing character.
Yes, I don't know if I should go over analysis, but yes, no, he's actually, you know, after Joker, a lot of the like, especially like the animated series fans look at Mr. Freeze as like the next like great Batman villain, because I guess you're supposed to kind of like, on one hand, you're supposed to have sympathy for him, but you're supposed to hate him at the same time, and they failed completely.
Well,
like,
you don't cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as like they knew what they were doing, and like. As somebody who appreciates puns, do I laugh my ass off every time I hear Arnold Schwarzenegger say one of his lines in that movie? Yes. But it's not a good laugh. I'm laughing at this movie. I'm not laughing with it.
Yeah.
Like, no. Now, do you want to add anything, Matt? Do you want to touch?
It's not good. That movie's not for me. That movie's not for it. It's like what is it called? There's a certain there we go. There's a certain kind of comedy that's called cringe comedy, where it's kind of like it makes you feel uncomfortable, but that's the purpose. I don't necessarily know that if this movie was kind of like the Ice Age. You know what I mean? Like I don't think he was doing that. I feel like this movie was just it almost kind of like. Maybe because there was like multiple movies that came out beforehand. I don't know how much movie the one before it made, or maybe they just thought they'll just eat anything. They'll just literally eat up anything. And like, you know, Schwarzenegger, he looks really interesting. Like we'll just like paint him gray and sparkly. Why not Uma Thurman? Throw her. Yeah, come on. And then like, and there's so many interesting things that they could have done in this movie. But I don't even know if this was like a failed experiment kind of thing. You know what I mean? I don't think it was kind of like we tried to do this one thing, but maybe we should have done it in a different way. I don't even think they were trying to do the good version of what this could have been. I think they just kind of just did what they wanted to do. So they set out. So maybe their experiment was a success, but like, hell yeah, I'm gonna laugh at it.
They sold a lot of toys. They probably sold a lot of toys, and they were probably happy because that's all this.
I just like every single one of those kids that I made their parents buy.
They Jar Jar Binks.
That's the other thing you have to remember, that the comic book movies, you know, realize they have to grow up with us, you know, because we're not going to be 8, 9, 10 years old all our lives. You know,
the first one was really dark, though.
They buttoned this.
It was made on both
got
levels.
more childish as it went on. Like obviously Batman, and then Batman Returns is dark, like really dark. And
But
then
it's still like you could take your 10-year-old to see it. You know, you could. If I mean, I don't know. My family, well, we watch whatever we want, but you know, but you could take your 10-year-old to see.
my 10-year-old would have watched that movie. But like it turned into a giant. It was like a giant toy commercial, legitimately. Like that's what the Transformers movies, most of them are.
I think they made like over 100 million back at the box office, and they probably made a lot of money. You know.
And then it died because then what Batman Unchained, I think it was supposed to be with Scarecrow in it, and like it was supposed to be darker, and like Nick Cage was supposed to be Scarecrow, and this was like at the point where Nick Cage was like in off. To be fair, he just won an Oscar.
Leaving Las Vegas is a fantastic movie, but I don't want to see.
Nick Cage just won an Oscar. So
George Clooney is a good actor too. He's a very smart person. He did really like compelling films. So
well, at least he knew not to leave his Batcave without his Batman MasterCard. So at least he knew that much. That's basically how intelligent Bruce Wayne was in this movie. So
obviously,
now,
minus Corbett's gone.
So I'm going to talk about a sequel that I actually like. But the thing is, the reason I'm making this as like the ugly is like, why was this made? And who made the decision to make it this way? And I'm talking about Return to Oz.
Oh.
Because, like, who thought 40 years later it's time to make a sequel to Wizard of Oz? But you know what we're going to do? You know why people love the first one? All that great music and the wonderful designs and the crazy fun characters and all that fun stuff. But we're going to make it real dark, and it's going to terrify your children and haunt their dreams forever. Let's make it Disney. And Disney made Return to Oz. And as somebody who appreciates what this film is as a film, is thinking like, who thought this was a good idea? Like, who thought this up? Because legitimately, it's like most people at this point didn't know Wizard of Oz because of the books that this film is going to be heavily influenced by. They know it because of the movie, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. People in in a lion's costume and a scarecrow and a Tin Man costume. And like Julie Garland playing like a 10-year-old when she's really like probably like 18 and dressed up like a 10-year-old. But like this fantasy, this beautiful Technicolor thing that was new in the time, then you take it and you make it really dark. You use all the original designs of the original character. So it's like an actual lion. And the Tin Man isn't like a person in a suit. He has like really thin limbs and everything. Like they're all really book accurate. So calling this even a sequel is a little weird. And you make it 40 years later. And like they made Dorothy like legitimately around the age she's supposed to be in the books. So like she looks considerably younger. And it deals with Mumby, who's this witch who literally has a room full of heads that she switches between because she beheads princesses and young women because she loves their faces and they make her look younger. So she switches off, like, I want to wear this face today. And then she has these horde of minions that are people on roller skates that are like terrifying. And the main villain's the Gnome King, which they use some really impressive claymation to make this like strange mountain into like this guy. And it's just like, it's cool, it's dark, it has this tone to it, and basically they rehash all the, like, you have TikTok now, which has a different connotation now, But like TikTok is like this big round like ball of like a metal man with like a mustache and a bowler. And like you have a pumpkin head scarecrow now and a gump, which is like a green moose head on a couch that's brought to life with magic. So like it's really weird. And I enjoy this movie. But why? So like that's why I have it here. But why?
Yeah, it's if you were like an art major, like and you wanted to go to Hollywood and design, like do creature design, like this is your jam. Like, you want to go and do makeup and creature design and like all this sort of stuff. Like this is probably like they probably like watching this movie or would love to work on a movie like this, but I don't know. I mean, I kind of want to watch it for those purposes, but it sounds like they got a little carried away.
Got a little dark. And like I was afraid of this as a kid. And like I own it in like my collection of movies here, and I'm like, I enjoy watching it.
What is it with you and like people wearing someone else's face? Is that
And I didn't even get to talk about face. I
also,
just
you can do like a second.
I just want his
runner-ups, by the way.
I just want his face.
There you go.
Oscar.
Like I just
have to mute my mic again.
Why? Like that's the only real question why I could talk about like why this movie. But they made it and I like it. And I read Siskel's review of it.
Okay.
And his review that's on Rotten Tomatoes that they have on there make me question why people trusted him as a film critic. It sounded childish. And like, so this was his review basically. Where's all the music? Where's all the fun from the first movie? This must be a bad movie. They didn't have any of that in this movie. And I'm like, you don't review a movie being like, where's all the music? It didn't have music in it. So it must be a bad movie. I'm sorry, Mr. Siskel. Like, where did you learn how to critique films? And it makes me legitimately question, because like I've never read any of his like written reviews. That's the first time I've ever read one of his reviews, and it just sounds so like just because it wasn't exactly what he wanted it to be, he's just like, oh, it's a bad movie. It's a weird sequel, and probably not a good sequel to that Wizard of Oz, but like it's an intriguingly interesting dark take on it. So there's my 2 cents. And I'm interested if either of you have watched it or will watch it, what you would think about it, because it's definitely not what you would expect from a Wizard of Oz sequel.
You can say anything you want about like The Matrix Reloaded or like, I don't know, like Spider-Man 3, or it's like any like random sequel you could think of where it was kind of like, that was disappointing. But like just like both of those movies, like for example, or maybe even like really, really bad ones, like any of the Jaws sequels. Like I have to imagine that a viewer that really likes the original, like they don't ever, even if they don't like the direction that they take their characters or like the premise or whatever, they don't feel like they weren't invited back. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like they're not feeling like alienated. I feel like this movie, the reason why probably Siskel and maybe other people don't like it is because it was like, oh, okay, like Return to Oz. Well, I mean, not you guys, like the new people. Like we want the new people, like the ones that can like take edgy and dark. Like we want those people. I mean, if you want like, I don't know, dancing and like whatever the hell, like come, I guess we're not gonna sing for you though. And so I feel like it's like that. I feel like I'm not gonna say whether or not that makes a sequel bad, but I could imagine that someone not liking a sequel based on the idea that they weren't like whatever made that first thing interesting, it almost was kind of like disregarded almost. Like that, I could imagine someone having kind of like a rage quit reaction. That sort of sounded like Siskel had that. Also, the way that you described his review kind of sounds like that Simpsons joke where Grandpa Simpson, is like old man yelling at cloud, and it's that joke means it's like I'm so angry at literally nothing. I also I feel like that's another thing too. Like it's either you're out of touch or you feel like the original thing like left you, or you're just like angry for for no reason. Almost like you're like looking to be mad. I hate that. I actually well yeah no I hate that. I hate when people were like I don't know like I hate a critique that can't find anything good to say, right? Or really nothing good to say. Or I don't like the idea that they're just gonna take a dump on a movie like just because like they feel like it. Like I feel like you have to earn your dump. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean. Shane, edit that part out. But you know what
have to be frank. And for what Matt said, legitimately, this isn't Return to that Oz.
Right.
Well, that's fair. That's a fair point. If you're going in thinking that this is like a real, genuine sequel to that movie, I can imagine you would be shocked. But you're a professional film critic, and you can't look at and critique a film based off of the film that you just watched, but instead, like, I wanted music. It's like, and it's just like, it's like, this isn't what I wanted. And it's just like the Mulan remake. When I hear people getting mad at it because it's like, they don't have Mushu. They don't have the songs in it. It's
I didn't recover from the first impression.
Like Shane, I'm sorry. Who was that? Who was that voice?
That's who I imagine somebody sitting behind their computer and just complaining about everything.
Can you please just like perfect that? I mean, that's got to be a thing on every episode. Holy shit, that was amazing.
Like,
my God.
I wanted to go into this movie and I wanted music and I wanted people in costumes and you didn't give it to me. And it's just like, that's what it felt like. And I'm just like, you're a professional critic who's on television. Like, you were Siskel and Ebert. And it's like, you didn't even give this film a chance for what it was. It was just not what you wanted it to be. So you're just like, oh, it was crap. But that's a whole other conversation.
Right, exactly. You know, I think that's an interesting thing about critics. I think that by the way, I do want to see this movie now because it sounds really interesting. But as far as Siskel goes, I disagree. He didn't like a lot of the John Carpenter stuff. They didn't like a lot of the John Carpenter stuff in the 80s, which later on people kind of adored, because of their flaws. And because there was some really good filmmaking in the works with those flaws. The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China is just fun. I mean, like we can get into that another video. But even Pauline Kael, like there are people who have a very, very personal relationship with the movie Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise. Dustin Hoffman won an Academy Award. Pauline Kael destroyed Rain Man in her review. She hates it. She thinks that she said it's Dustin Hoffman playing one note on the piano all movie long. It's just that same note. It's his favorite type of role because he could just go as deep into, this autistic character and it's just and she just ripped him apart. And I read the review. I was like, "Oh my God, people love that movie." And I have a very kind of like personal connection with the movie too. I think that I think there's a little bit of pandering in it, to what you expect your viewers to get. But then again, it's a Hollywood movie. It's an American movie. You go into 75% of Hollywood movies knowing that there's an expectation, and the filmmakers are going to kind of try and live up to that expectation. But she, Pauline Kael could do the same thing. I think what happens with a lot of movie critics is they start to take authority. They start to say, okay, now I'm going to come in with a swift sword and I'm going to say the thing that needs to be said, without saying, giving more of a well-rounded review of this entire film. This sounds like a good example of a movie that a critic would just completely destroy, but it does subvert your expectations. And it was, obviously it's a surprise that it was made the way it was made,
I'm pretty sure the person that was like, let's make the Black Cauldron was also like, let's make this too. And people weren't ready for it. Because, there was an expectation at Disney. This is a Disney movie. It's like you have this expectation that you're going to get this from, a Disney animated film. Black Cauldron bombed. But, I've never actually watched it. I want to on, Disney Plus because I'm like, it sounds dark and crazy. Mm-hmm. And it's different. It wasn't what people were expecting. And at least when I try to review a film, I try to remember that there are people that probably love this film.
Right. That's true. No, that's good.
There's
point.
People that I don't my brother. I don't see eye to eye with movies with him a whole lot of the time. My brother loves Pauly Shore movies. And I recall I've watched Encino Man. I think it's a fun time, I guess. And he loves what is it, Son-in-Law and stuff like that. He loves Pauly Shore, Biodome. And I'm just not my thing. And
it reflects people's personalities. And I haven't seen your brother in a long time, but that's part of why it's so funny.
We watched Us together. And I know Matt has a very particular feeling about Us because we didn't agree on Us. And my brother was just it's fine. That was basically the extent of his reaction to that movie. And my brother loves anime. And I'm getting into anime, but I'm not in love with anime. And it's just we all have different preferences. Just if you watch our first episode where we have our top 10, I think that was a great video to start with because I think you get a sense of what we're looking for in general in film. And I diligently keep track of the films that I watch now. And I've been doing this since 2016. So I have a spreadsheet of all the films in 2016 that I've seen, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Very few of those I actually have a drama at number one. Mm-hmm. Usually they're genre films because I love genre films and I love the fact that they could do so many different things. But right now, never, rarely, sometimes, always is my number one film of 2020. And that's a film about a young woman going to get an abortion.
Wow.
And there's no frills about it. There's no frills at all about it. There's no, it's just this young woman. And it was extremely impactful and moving. And then my number two is the Shaun the Sheep movie, Farmageddon. Because I'm absolutely in love with Shaun the Sheep movies. And they do so many great things. And what the hell else was the rest of my top 10? Wait a minute. I have my spreadsheet. Trying to remember. My number 3 was Bad Education, that HBO film with Hugh Jackman, and I love that film. And honestly, my last couple of years, my number one film of, number one film of 2019 was Jojo Rabbit. And 1917, The Lighthouse, Parasite, Knives Out, Uncut Gems. Those were some of my favorites of top of last year. The year before, Annihilation was my favorite. I was shocked 8th Grade made my number 2, but that movie blew me away. I know how much Matt loves that movie. And 2017, it's Blade Runner 2049, Wind River, Shape of Water, War for the Planet of the Apes, and Get Out. That's my top 5. And like
I'll get out.
most of those films I just read are some kind of genre film or offbeat and quirky in some kind of way. That speaks to me. But like I could appreciate any kind of genre of film. I'll basically watch anything, and I do. I watch everything. And I feel like it gives me a better perspective on things because like I watch movies that like if I have to watch another Netflix animated movie from this year, I'm gonna lose it. And like I watch Happy Madison films that come out on Netflix. Like what the hell was that called? The bottom film of this year for me was The Wrong Missy. That was it. Starring David Spade. And it's a Happy Madison film on Netflix. Wow. And then there's Hubie Halloween coming out in a couple of weeks, Adam Sandler's next movie, which he promised if he didn't get nominated for an Oscar, he's going to make the worst film he's ever made. So I'm ready. I am so ready.
I'm not ready.
For this movie. And like
never ready. No longer ready. Ever.
But like that's it. And like I had somebody comment on one of my videos specifically about I'm thinking of ending things. And they even said it's like I appreciate how you talked about this film because so many people are ripping it to shreds. Like people who aren't fans of Charlie Kaufman.
Sure.
Because like if you're not a fan of Charlie Kaufman, it's really hard to get into his movies.
Yeah. Did you see it, Matt?
No, I haven't seen it. I mean, I haven't seen it. Yeah.
I want to say I will. I mean, wow. I don't know why anyone would rip it to shreds. I need to see it again when I'm in like that mood because man, it can be bleak. It is definitely bleak. And it takes you to a very like dark place. And I think I really needed something like inspiring that night. Maybe like a Judd Apatow, like laugh, be okay with getting older sort of thing, Yeah. So I mean, this is bleak.
Are you recommending it?
What's that? I definitely recommend it for the directing, the shooting, the screenplay, but it takes you to a pretty kind of twisted, kind of dark place.
And like I recommend basically any Charlie Kaufman film to cinephiles out there because like it's just something to experience. Really. Can
you name some of his movies? Because I kind of forget what he's made.
He wrote Being John Malkovich. He wrote Adaptation. Synecdoche, New York, I believe. And then Anomalisa.
Saw that.
So like I love Adaptation. That's some of the best Nick Cage out there is that movie. But like it's very interesting thinking about these different kinds of things. What I'm trying to do real quick, I want to bring up
filmography.
No, I wanted to bring up like because we had worked on because I know we're getting like obviously we're probably getting towards the end of our podcast for this week, and I wanted to have up what we were supposed to be talking about for the next one. But I just find it so interesting that it's like that's art. Everybody has their feelings and opinions about things. And I feel like as long as you keep an open mind and give a movie a chance and be like, The Wrong Missy was not for me. I didn't laugh once. But especially with comedy, everybody has their own sense of humor. And like, I remember like stuff like In Bruges. I laugh at all that. It's dark, and some people might find it messed up. But you know what? I find it hilarious. And just like, that's the beauty of this, and which is why I like talking movies with people. Why I enjoy having this podcast. This is going to be a lot of fun.
That's right.
But I guess in wrapping up, so our next show we're going to be doing is Best Movie Monologues.
Oh, really? Oh, nice.
So I think we could have some fun with this one. And you might hear a few impressions from me.
Yes.
I wouldn't have it
Yes.
any other way.
And I guarantee you there'll be some Pacino.
Wow. Beautiful.
Oh, man.
Beautiful.
Burn this place down with a flamethrower.
Very good.
Oh, I just
Yes.
watched Heat last weekend, so
He just hams it up in Heat.
so
Oh my
He takes that TV and just throws it across the room like, whoa.
I understand. It's like you could be sitting there on that couch. You could be sitting in here in her ex-husband's house. But you're not going to be sitting here watching my TV. It just rips the TV out.
He just I don't know, like he just decided to just go fucking ham that whole movie, and it's so good because it's so good that he did that because the movie itself is kind of like a straight arrow, you know, and he just like
It needed to break some of that tension because that 3
Yeah.
hours of just straight tension can like destroy a person.
my
Like
favorite line of all time. When he's walking out of that, you know, like outdoor area where he meets the one dude and he goes, "Don't waste my motherfucking time." Greatest thing ever. I can't wait when I'm on my next job to use that on somebody. I just can't wait to use that on somebody.
He just like who, what an owl, who? You an owl? You an owl? Who? And Hank Azaria's character, he's just like, she's got a great ass, and you'll head all the way up it.
All the way up it. That's right. That's right.
So
Oh,
there will be some Pacinoing going on in 2 weeks. And like even like De Niro in that film where he's just like talking to a dead man on the other line. There's a dead man on the other side of this line. When he's talking to, like, I'm just like, they're on so different wavelengths in this movie.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
just like, Robert De Niro looks like he's going to murder somebody. And Al Pacino looks like he wants to go to a strip club and just like, yeah, let it rain. And but it works. But yeah, so there's definitely going to be some Pacino and De Niro going on during our next podcast. But I'm going to leave it at that since there's fun little nuggets to look forward to. But
Can't wait.
thank you all for tuning in to our third episode of the Development Hell podcast. And thank you as always for supporting Matt, Alex, and your Wasteland reviewer.